We have a guest in the studio. In the previous hour, we were talking about road safety and public transport. In this hour, we still continue the conversation about transport, this time with particular focus to urban road safety. And we're joined by Wilson Tikwa. He's an assistant director from the Kenya Urban Roads Authority in charge of road safety. Wilson, welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you very much.
This is the hot seat, the one that you're occupying. But we want you to feel comfortable, be easy, because we are friendly people, even when we ask the most difficult questions. Let's start with the Kenya Urban Roads Authority. You know, we talk about it very many times here, but there are people who do not understand the structure of our road sector. The Kenya Urban Roads Authority, what exactly is your mandate and what do you do?
Back in 2007, an act of parliament was actually enacted to create the three roads authorities. That is Kenya National Highways, Kenya Rural Roads Authority, and Kenya Urban Roads Authority. And KURA, or Kenya Urban Roads Authority, was actually given the mandate to manage all national urban trunk roads, basically the roads around urban areas, or mainly the built-up area in this country. Initially, it used to be municipalities, but now with the onset of the county government system, we are now actually spread all over each and every county headquarter. So we have 10 regions that actually manage the entire country, that we actually use as offices to actually perform and execute our mandate.
So when you say urban, are we talking about towns or cities? Like we know, KURA is in Nairobi. KURA is in Mombasa. Is KURA in Isiolo? Is KURA in Marsabit?
When you talk about urban areas, it is not only cities and major towns. Any upcoming town is actually an urban center. We are everywhere in this country, and that's why I said we are in every county headquarter. We were the first to build a tarmac road in Lamu County, since this country was actually known. So basically we've spread all over the country, not only in these major cities as the perception is.
So you talked about national urban trunk roads, that being the purview of KURA, right? Could you tell us exactly what those are? Which roads specific? So if I'm in Nairobi, for example, how do I know then which network is a national urban trunk road, for example? And then should I be making demands on you for my estate road, which is in a shambles, or what exactly are we talking about here?
Back then, a classification was done of the whole road network in Kenya. And from that classification, therefore, it was decided which kind of roads, like now for Kenya is Class A, Class B, and so on. And then now you have the UB Urban Road Network was now designated to KURA. And lower than that now, you go to the county roads. And even lower than that, you now have forest roads. You even have roads under KWS. So the urban road network is actually a classification that you actually need to get that classification system for you to be able to know which road belongs to who. Yes.
Okay.
The roads inside the estates, are those under KURA?
Some and some not.
The ones that are not, who are they under in the city of Nairobi?
Yeah, they're under the county government.
Nairobi is not rural, so it can't be under Kenya Rural Roads Authority.
You will be surprised that there are still roads under Kenya Rural Roads Authority in Nairobi. For example, Gataka Road was done by KERA, and that is the main link road that joins Nairobi to Ongata Rongai. So, and that's still within the urban area. So all these roads actually, each of them has been designated to a specific authority.
Okay.
Yes.
So when you talk about a road, we're talking about everything about the road. So there's the motorable space on the road. There's the drainage on that road. There's the pedestrian walkways on the road, the cyclable areas on the road, places for mkokoteni pushers to use, and footbridges as well, right? It's everything. So when you're designing or when you're managing a road, do you put all this into consideration, or is there a requirement that you must demonstrate how all road users are going to benefit from this space that's been designated as a road?
At Kenya Urban Roads Authority, we deal mainly with the urban environment. And when you talk about the urban environment, you actually have to put in consideration each and every person or anything moving on that particular corridor. Whether it is a 60-meter corridor, 80-meter corridor, 30-meter corridor, you must actually provide all that within that very space, because at the end of the day, you need to move pedestrians, you need to move motorized traffic, you need to move someone pulling a cart, you need actually to have provisions for each and every kind of mobility on that particular road. So in our design stages, therefore, as Kenya Urban Roads Authority, being an urban space, we actually take in consideration all those road users, and therefore we must actually include it right from the start from our own designs.
You know, every time one looks at a road, at least as a layman, let me say, every time I look at a road, I see a passageway that has been designed for me to use for traveling. But then there's always the question of, what are the thought processes that go into designing a road, or for that matter, designing an expressway? What does one put in place, and how does the thinking go?
Let's use an example. Outer Ring Road.
Basically, as you design a road, there is what comes first is actually what is that road meant to serve. Is it a high-speed road? Is it supposed to move traffic away or in? Is it a service road? Is it maybe a road serving a port, for example? Therefore, you expect a lot of slow-moving traffic. So that is the thought process. Is it a road that serves a market? If it is a road serving a market, of course, you know that a lot of the road users will be pedestrians. So that is the thought process. Now, as you said, the expressway, for example, is supposed to move traffic as fast as possible from one point to another. But when you talk about Outer Ring actually was a link road. It was supposed to link Tikwa Road and the North Airport Road. Mm-hmm. It was supposed to actually kind of divert most of the traffic from the main city, because that time we didn't have the expressway. So we wanted to find a way that traffic can actually go around the city and probably join Tikwa Road and move forward north. But as you know, again, Outer Ring is an interesting one, because it is actually an interface between a very highly populated residential area and a highly populated industrial area. And therefore, that movement actually creates a lot of conflict between pedestrianized traffic and motorized traffic.
Mm-hmm. Those two elements, though, were known before the construction and the design of the road, isn't it? That you knew essentially that there was going to be a link between a highly popularized area in terms of residents and then an industrial area. So should those things not be taken into consideration at the design stage? Because you still end up having the same problem that this road was supposed to bring to an end.
Basically, that should have been the basic principle. But as it is not normally what happens practically. Because when Outer Ring was being developed back in 2014, the population in the Umoja area and all the suburbs around it is not what it is today. What normally we notice is that anytime a new road is developed, we only have the control of the corridor, but we don't have the control of what happens in the land use characteristics surrounding that road. So basically, because you find that development control is also another issue. So if, for example, the land was freehold, then after a road comes in now, it becomes commercialized. And therefore, that actually brings in a lot of building, a lot of settlement, a lot of population, and it actually spirals beyond what actually we designed for. That's exactly what happened in the Eastern Bypass. The Eastern Bypass, Utawala used to be very smooth between City Cabanas and Ruiru. But a few years later, the land use characteristics changed tremendously. And therefore, now it is no longer a bypass. That is, now we had to dual it to try and make it actually a bypass as it were.
But then these are things that you know.
Yes.
These are characteristics of Kenya that you live in Kenya. So all of you engineers, designers, road safety experts and you know what roads are doing to this country in terms of development. So when you're designing a new road, when you're designing a new, let's say, bypass somewhere, land use is going to change, population is going to move, and all these things are going to happen. And then you've got to start thinking, how is this road likely to look like in the next 10, 15 years? Isn't that what you put into consideration as you're doing a road?
Yeah, but initially the design was for a bypass, not an urban road. There is a difference. And what we envisaged is to move traffic as fast as possible between Mombasa Road and Thika Road. And the whole ideal situation was actually to ensure that we decongest the city. But now we have no control. That is what I said, we have no control on the adjacent land use. We cannot control that. Therefore, when we designed based on data collected at that particular time, and probably with a projection of about 5-10 years to come. But nobody could have envisaged that after 10 years, that land would have been fragmented to that level. So you cannot really adequately say that we knew this is exactly what is going to happen. Because again, now, land use and land development control is in another department. It's not with us. If actually there was a very big harmony between development control and infrastructural construction, I think that we would be going somewhere.
Wilson, I know City has a question, but before you come in, City, I'm assuming that you operate KURA, KENHA, KERA, and all the others, even the Ministry of Lands, operates within a larger master plan. And the larger master plan is looking at the Nairobi metropolitan area and the growth and development of this urban area in the next X number of years. That's why that bypass was not just chalked into a design just the other day. It must have been somewhere in the plan before. So when you're coming to design the road, you're coming to design a road that had already been put, we're going to have some ring roads outside that decongest traffic, eastern, western, northern, southern bypasses, right? So when you're starting to work on the design for this road, aren't you thinking about the larger plan? The larger plan is that the Nairobi metropolitan is expanding outwards.
Yeah, we have that. We think about it and we plan for it. And you're very right that there could be an elaborate larger master plan for the metropolis of Nairobi. But it is not always that all those corridors are provided for. And that is why you find that we are even doing land acquisition. It is because there was no corridor. It is out of necessity that we find that there is a need to put a road here, and therefore we're going on with the other process of the whole other expensive process of land acquisition. But if the corridors were there, like now for some roads, the corridors were there, they were existing, like the Kileleshwa link road between Ngong Road and all the way to Westlands. That was an existing corridor. We only had to move a few encroachers on that and develop the road with actually minimal cost. But you see that road could not even come through because it was supposed to come all the way to Langata Road. But now when it reached Kibera, now it found another bottleneck. So it is the whole thing I'm talking about development control, land use characteristics, land use tenure system is a problem. And that is actually where the road sector actually cannot move as smoothly as we anticipated.
What I wanted to ask is, when I'm still on this issue of designs, do you involve other disciplines when you are designing a road, say, for instance, like urban planners or economists or people who study populations? Are they involved in this process?
Yeah, we have experts on transport economics, and those are the people who do feasibility studies before we actually develop any corridor. So they're actually incorporated in the planning process.
So then, if they are incorporated and we're discussing what we're discussing and the direction this particular discussion is taking, can one then therefore assume that there can be a flaw in the design? Because if problems arise and they couldn't have been anticipated fully, so one now has to do some other or make some other decisions to, for lack of a better word, rectify what was done. Would one be right in saying that then there was a design flaw?
No. I can categorically say that that is not possible. The designs we use are actually interrogated by many experts, not only within us. We even engage consultants to do the same, and we supervise them, and we actually work with what is internationally sound in the design world. But what I'm saying here is that some things are predictable, others are not. And specifically with us as a developing country, things are spiraling in all directions. And a road situation is a very fluid situation because it depends and actually depends on so many characteristics and factors. And everything that happens around a road actually affects that particular road. So when you find that probably there is a tremendous accidents in one particular location, it is not necessarily that there was a flaw in design. It could be so many other things, even behavior. We have seen a very good examples here with the expressway. This is one of the best designed roads in this country, but you all know what has been happening along at the Mlolongo exit. People overspeed. It is about our attitude. It is about our indiscipline. It is about so many things that are wrong with our behavior as a community.
How do you decide as KURA which roads to work on? And the different aspects towards this. I mean, there's the management of roads, there's the construction from scratch, there is design and all of this. As you look at the country and take that into perspective, looking at now, maybe let's just focus on the Nairobi metropolitan area. So then you have your dormitory towns, Ruiru, Syokimau, Kitengela and such. How do you decide we're going to work on this area? What elements then affect those decisions?
Our plans are normally informed mainly by statistical evidence. But a huge chunk of our budget actually goes to maintenance. And maybe rarely new constructions. And new constructions are actually based on as the city expands and population data. And like what we've been doing about the informal sectors in Kariobangi, in Kawangware, we actually look at who needs the road most.
Okay.
That is basically what actually informs. And maintenance is actually the status of the road.
Right.
After inspections and audits, we actually see that this road actually needs to be rehabilitated. So that is actually how we prioritize our work and our engagement.
Okay. So then as the country develops, because a few moments ago, you talked about the fact that there are certain factors which will change. So you know this already. You see government, for example, making a move towards widening the Nairobi metropolitan area. So even as that conversation is taking place and there's certain factors then that are coming out to play, do you then say, oh, hold up a minute, the area of the capital is expanding? Should that not mean that we also need to put in the requisite infrastructure to make sure that we can actually truly have a cosmopolitan area that is spreading north, south, east, west?
You're very right. That actually happens, but again, it all depends on budgetary allocations.
Okay.
And that is the biggest constraint at the moment. Lack of adequate funds to actually do those very big dream jobs that we all want to do around the metropolis and other areas in the country, because we only not think about developing Nairobi. We now have several towns in Kenya that have already acquired city status, and we would also want to develop them equally as well as Nairobi. But now, for financial allocation is a problem. Yes.
Let's take a break. It's 29 minutes after 8, Kenya's biggest conversation. It continues. We remind you about elections, bill and norma. As we head towards this general election, it must be repeated over and over and over again. Elections, bill and norma. I'm sure Wilson, you'll tell us, whenever we have this kind of post-election violence or skirmishes around elections, roads are also affected. In fact, people go and, light up tires. What does that do to the road when people are protesting and they just go and light up and burn tires on the road?
Basically, of course, it destroys the road. Some of that fire can actually last for hours and raise the temperature to several degrees, thousands of degrees high, and therefore melt the road. And as a result, it actually becomes a weak point in that particular road. And potholes develops, and next time there's rain or even just some humidity, then the road starts peeling off. and as a result, the road gets destroyed. And maybe you spend a lot of millions, a lot of shillings actually rehabilitating or constructing that new road. So we also find a lot of destruction on the road furniture, the road signs, the guardrails. All those things around roads are actually affected because the biggest arena in any demonstration is actually the road.
Yeah.
There is where people go to demonstrate.
It's the best and most visible open space.
Yes, the open space, the space that is actually available for all, and most of the time is actually a road.
So let's go into these elections, Bill and Norma. Let's make sure that we play our individual roles in maintaining peace and in preaching peace. 8:30, Kenya's biggest conversation will return shortly. We are talking about road safety, and the manager in charge of road safety at the Kenya Urban Roads Authority, Wilson Tikwa, is in the studio with us. He's an assistant director in charge of road safety at the Kenya Urban Roads Authority. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Eric Latif Nduoko City Muga, our guest this morning. Wilson Tikwa, assistant director in charge of road safety at the Kenya Urban Roads Authority. We are talking about road safety on this World Swahili Day. What's road safety in Kiswahili?
Usalama wa barabara.
Usalama barabarani. Well done.
No.
You've
You're
done
actually okay.
very well.
You're okay.
Oh, very
It
well.
was nice and descriptive. Good.
Usalama barabarani. Wilson, there are very many incidences that we read and see and experience on a daily basis on urban roads. These are accidents that lead to death, that lead to injury, that lead to serious injury to many people. Either motorists or pedestrians, caused by whatever. It could be a cow crossing the road, it could be a pedestrian crossing the road, it could be a motorist, and an accident happens. What are the main causes of or concerns for road safety for you as KURA?
Let me begin with the causes. The main causes of road traffic accidents, to a larger percent, about 90%, is the human error. And when we talk about human error, it's not necessarily the driver alone. Even that pedestrian walking on that road is also a human being, or the one pulling a cart, or the one riding a bicycle or a motorcycle is a human being. And of course, even yourself, from the way you reason, we reason differently, and we take decisions differently, and even our response systems are so much different. So anytime you are on that particular corridor as a road, you know that one of the greatest causes of an accident is actually human decisions. The other thing is environmental conditions, sometimes bad weather. If you're driving down a road, especially urban road, because mainly there is a lot of glare because of the traffic is quite high. So as you're driving, it could be raining, and of course you know that what rain does to light, because of the droplets, it actually refracts that light into so many. So by the time it hits your eye, it is so many millions of times actually refracted light, and therefore visibility becomes very poor. We also see that most of our roads in the urban areas are not very well lit, or rather not lit at all, because of it's not that traffic lights are not put there, but they were put there. But vandalism again is another huge problem in this country. So poor weather, poor road conditions sometimes is also another problem, and therefore those are the various causes of road accidents. But the single most the one that we can singularly say it is the biggest causes of accidents is actually speeding, because it is gazetted in this country that in any urban setup you have to move at a speed of 50 kilometers per hour, but many a times you find someone cruising at 120. Even the expressway now, people are doing 180, and you're only moving a distance of a maximum distance of about 26 kilometers. So where could you be going with that kind of speed? So speeding is the greatest problem that actually leads to traffic accidents in urban areas.
So with all those things, there's user behavior, there's all. You have not mentioned at all anything about design and maintenance of the road. I
have mentioned maintenance when I said the
Street
condition of the
lighting,
road and the condition of the road.
Design of the road.
Design of the road in most cases. Why I'm not mentioning the design of the road is because for urban setup, you're not supposed to move beyond 50 kilometers per hour. And even if the road was not adequately designed at that particular speed, your braking distance is very, very effective. You will not be able to hit anything at that particular speed. Why am I saying this is because we've seen a number of roads in Nairobi that are very well designed, but we had to do intervention measures because of high rates of accidents. Not because the design had any flaw, but because of the behavior of the road users. And one such road is Red Hill Road. Red Hill Road is a dual carriage. It is very well constructed. It is very visible. It is very clear. Visibility distance is at any turning point is more than 200 meters, which is actually the standard for any highway, not even an urban road. The signage is superb. Everything is clear. The road is very well marked, but people cruise instead of you going at 80. Because that road you're supposed to move at 80, and it is very well signed. At some point, we even put 50. But you find someone going at 120, and you actually fly out of the road. So design is not necessarily a problem. The problem is the attitude and the behavior of our road users.
It's the user.
It's the user.
So what happens when there is actually a problem with the road and somebody's going slow? I'll give you an example, and maybe it's not within KURA, but I mean, it's your brothers and sisters at another organization still having to do with roads. I'll take the Ngong Road example.
That's KURA.
Yeah? Okay. Ngong Road. We had 2 major accidents that threw Kenyans into a tailspin. Not necessarily because people were speeding, but because the road was... There were very many things. Street lights were not there. There was this whole bumpy part of the road where people were not sure where they were ending up into an acceleration lane. I'm giving you the details because it's exactly what it was. And then we had, unfortunately, fatal accidents. Not necessarily because people were speeding, but the state of the road was a mess. So what happens here?
Okay. First of all, for Ngong Road, because I remember one of the fatal accidents is the one that went under the
bridge.
The bridge.
Yes.
And of course, after investigations, those guys were speeding and they were drunk. And that particular road section had not been completed. So when the road is not complete, you cannot mark it. You can only mark the road when it is completely put on the topmost layer. So if the road is still under construction and you won't use it like a normal highway, you speed, and it was actually around 2 a.m. in the morning. So that accident should not have happened if that person was going slowly.
If I was going slowly and the road has not been completed, for
Yes,
example,
yes.
and there's no marking on the
Yes,
road to
yes.
tell me divert in this direction
Yes.
or do not use this part, who then needs to take the responsibility for making sure that the road is marked?
Okay, now for that is what I was saying. If the road is not complete, and you can actually feel by the way you're going, you yourself as a motorist can actually feel that this road is not complete. It is bumpy. Therefore, you should actually reduce your speed, even if not to the standard 50. Because if those people were moving at 50, that accident should have happened. After that, actually, the road was complete. We put the final layer, and the road is now very well marked. We've even put a retaining wall now on that particular section, and nobody has hit that thing again after the road has been marked. At most of the time, we don't put bumps where it is not necessary, because that road is supposed to be a dual carriage, supposed to move traffic. It is supposed to decongest the city. So, but sometimes it actually necessitates, because of user behavior, for us to put traffic calming measures like now Rambo strips that are very annoying because they are very uncomfortable. But we force you, because we are not supposed to force you to stop. We are only supposed to put a sign that you're moving at 50, and then you obey that sign and there will be no accident. Yes.
Okay. And the issue of floodlights on roads, I mean, or lighting on roads, it doesn't matter where we are looking around the country. In terms of maintenance, I mean, again, outer ring comes into discussion here. The Ngong Road one was one, but you've said that those have been put up. How do you
They haven't finished.
They've not finished.
No,
okay. Outer ring, Gong Road, some parts of this Mombasa Road also. When then, or how then do you make the decision to do that? And I'm going to combine it with another question, if you'll allow me. How then do you decide who your contractors are, and what kind of process of, number one, integrity, and number two, expertise do they have to go through to make sure that they're actually doing a good job?
Okay. You've worked so many questions in one.
I know. There's so many issues.
Let me attempt to answer them one by one. With the one about procurement, who is qualified enough to do that, there's a whole procurement process that is followed for that, and I don't think I'm really an expert to answer on that one. When we talk about the street lighting, we as a roads authority, we actually construct a road and install the street lights.
Okay.
But management of that is not within our mandate.
Okay.
It is actually within the county governments. That is how it works. Management of traffic lights. It is them. So the moment we install them, now the mandate actually shifts from us to them.
Okay.
So if vandalism is done and they are not replaced, that now is actually not within our purview as KURA.
You know, I understand that every road user has some responsibility that they must bear when they're using the road, and that they must be careful. There's this road we follow towards the airport. Every once in a while, there's a turnaround somewhere near Yana Tires. Every once in a while, you'll find it is blocked. Then every once in a while, it is opened up so you can follow it. But you're never really sure when they're going to block it and when they're going to open it. But that barrier clearly prevents you from using it because it's there. Now, when a road is incomplete and there are no signs to indicate, because I've seen road signs that indicate that there's loose chippings on the road, so you know. A big sign saying go slow. Better still, a barrier that prevents you from heading in the direction, because the fact that those barriers are moved, it means they're mobile. So it brings me to the question that Ndu was asking, but I'm going to ask it differently. KURA doesn't build roads. They ensure that they are built well. Now, when you have a contractor on site or someone is working and you are supervising the contractor, what action does KURA take when a supervisor hasn't adhered to the norms that were set before them or the requirements that they know were set before them? I ask this question because that same stretch of road, from what I've seen, we've had more than one contractor. Up to a certain point.
Long road.
Yes.
Yeah, in fact, he'll tell us how many contractors there are.
Yes.
3 or 2.
And that stretch of road up to Karen, how many kilometers is it? Okay, the reason why I'm asking...
It's shorter than the expressway.
It is shorter than the expressway.
Yes.
So the reason why I'm asking is, when you change contractors, then how do you guarantee the standardization of what was supposed to be built? And it isn't as though it is some hundreds of kilometers, it's just a few. Yes.
Oh, okay. One thing, it is for sure certain that Ngong Road is not a long road, but it was constructed in stages. Not all of it was done at the same time. And this is basically due to availability of funding, because it's not like we had money to do it the whole time or all at once. So if money was coming in those stages, therefore you can only, because the first phase was done all the way to, from the library all the way to Uchumi, and then the second phase was done all the way to the junction, and finally the third phase was done all the way to Karen. And the third phase is still going on, is not yet complete. And therefore, we cannot say conclusively that that road has actually been completed. It's still under construction. It is true. Contractors also, they behave differently. The section between the library and Uchumi was done by someone else. And you can remember that traffic control, traffic management was quite adequate. The one from Uchumi all the way to the junction was even better. Traffic management was even better at that time. Now, from the junction now to Karen,
Premium tiers.
not maximum. Not maximum. Of course, because now funding was coming from different, because now the second phase was being funded through a grant. The first phase, the same. But now the third phase was actually being funded by Exchequer. And therefore, the flow of money might not have been as good as it was for the first stages. But as it is now, the government has really tried as much as possible to fund that road to completion. And why it is not complete yet is because, of course, budgetary allocation is not like the grant that the money was actually given all at the same time. So what I can actually say about Ngong Road is that it has now moved to the last stage of construction, and traffic management is now better than what it was before. And of course, there could have been flaws here and there, because sometimes we put ribbons, we put the signs, and it is also adjacent to an informal settlement around there. So anytime you put a metallic object there, it disappears. The ribbons themselves are cut. The area is not well lit. It is very poor to manage, even for the contractor himself.
My brother Wilson,
Yes.
I hear everything that you're saying. There's an engineer in charge from KURA, right, who's in charge of the project. So it doesn't matter whether it's contractor A, whether it's Eric and City's company that qualified and got this bid. There should be standardization, because there is the contractor is one, the owner of the contract is KURA, and the engineer in charge works from that organization and knows what should be done. Now, shouldn't there be better traffic management during construction? Because I think most of the challenges that we have with road construction in this country is at that point of road construction. You are supposed to be making sure that the road is watered so that there is no dust. It doesn't happen. Proper marking so that people can know where the diversions are. It doesn't happen. Proper marking at night so people can know this is the edge of the road, this is the beginning of the rough surface, this is the end of the rough surface. It doesn't happen. What are the standards within KURA for construction at that point of construction?
The standards are common for all of us, not only within KURA, for all the road authorities. The construction standards are the same. But majorly, of course, there's an engineer in charge who is supposed to oversee the works, and he does his work, of course, according to... but now what happens now, the problem is when actually a project now stalls because of lack of flow of funding, and it is not complete. For you as or for a general public person or a layman, he will not understand that. They will say that there is laxity here and there but now when funding actually stops, now that is another whole scenario that nobody is actually in control of. Until now funding is available again, so that now the contractor and the engineer can now come to site and continue with the construction.
But shouldn't KURA, because KURA is still operating, whether the contractor has funds on the road, there is somebody who's getting a salary at the end of the month, and their job is to be the engineer in charge of this road and the construction. When there are deaths, when there are people getting maimed, when people are ending up at the spinal injury hospital because there was no proper marking on this road, who bears responsibility?
As I said before, it is a two-way process. As much as you blame the road authority or the engineer on the road, you should also blame the road user at the end of the day, because that is exactly the person who is in control of that particular vehicle moving at that particular time. This person possibly could have been using that road every day, and he knows that it is not complete. Why doesn't he take his own responsibility to ensure that he also is a responsible user on that particular road? Instead of just blaming everything to the people contracting or to the people constructing that particular section, you should also put a lot of blame to the road user behavior, because our road user behavior is the worst actually so far. That is why we have all those fatalities. After all, how many people use that road every day? Many. So, out of one accident in maybe 100,000 people who use the road, we should also actually place a blame on that particular road user.
Okay, let's talk about road users a little bit more. If we look at the recently completed expressway, let's look at Mombasa Road, we look at parts of Waiyaki Way, and where previously there were provisions for pedestrians, for cyclists, and those don't exist anymore.
Bus stops,
for example. I'll give you an example. Between the South B turnoff and General Motors on Mombasa Road, there is no longer any crossover between this side of Mombasa Road and the other side of Mombasa Road. That means if I were going to, if I were going to Furniture Palace and I was here, I could not cross over anymore. I would have to go to General Motors. If I was walking, I would walk all the way and then have to walk all the way down. Are the road users taken into consideration when something like this is happening? And then when we see that that doesn't happen, what happens? What happens in that case?
Okay, first of all, the expressway is again a road. I wouldn't be really adequately able to answer on that. But at the same time, if, for example, the expressway was ours and those crossing points have actually either reduced or have been the
No,
road.
they've not reduced.
Yes.
They don't exist.
They don't exist.
Yeah.
Why are you saying they don't exist? Is because initially, before the expressway was constructed, there was only one footbridge. There was one major crossing point at the General Motors. And later on, Kenya actually built a crossing point there. That was the only footbridge. The next one was at Bellevue.
Yeah.
So all these others were illegal crossings. There was only one marked crossing here at Airtel. And that actually came out of demand, and because very many people were crossing at that place, and therefore fatalities were so many there. So the place had to be signed and marked. Ideally, if it is an expressway, then you're not supposed to have as many crossing points. Therefore, this is just a way to instill discipline to the other, even if you're a pedestrian. This is an expressway. You cannot have a footbridge after every 2 meters or 20 meters or 30 meters. They are designated locations, actually derived from statistical data. Knowing that General Motors is a high pedestrianized crossing point, Bellevue the same, and all those are, there's another one at Imaradaima. Yeah, those are avenues, major avenues of pedestrian traffic. And there, because again, financially, we cannot. It is not really cheap to construct one footbridge. It's quite an amount of money. So it is not economically viable to have one after every 200 meters.
Let's use an example of a road that you're in charge of. Okay, Outer Ring Road. Okay, how many designated pedestrian crossing spots do we have on Outer Ring Road?
We have constructed 9 footbridges.
Okay.
In the
How
13
many
kilometers.
designated matatu bus stops do you have on Outer Ring Road? You see, the problem that we have with Outer Ring Road at Tasia every morning is matatus stopping right on the road, trying to pick passengers. On the side is the railway land, so there's nowhere where matatus can go and park because this is the railway path. What have you done about that?
At that particular location, where the railway actually fenced off its corridor,
Yes.
there is a back lane and there is a footbridge. That footbridge is actually lands pedestrians on the other back lane, so that matatus are actually supposed to go round and pick passengers on the other side and move. But that is, as it were, our public transport system again is the worst so far. They pick and drop passengers anywhere. Even when you provide those designated dropping and pick-off points, they don't obey to that. And it's not only them, it is us. Because you, ukiingia matatu hapa saa hii utasema, ukifika mahali unaenda, you will not wait for nishukisha hapo. Ama usimame kwa barabara usimamishe gari, na unajua hauko kwa bus bay. So it is a whole system of the users and the operators. It's not so much a system of the whatever are not provided for.
Let's take a break, just a short break, as we say goodbye to the audience on KTN Home who've been with us since the top of the hour. But the conversation continues on SpiceFM. We have with us in the studio Wilson Tikwa. He's Assistant Director in charge of Road Safety at the Kenya Urban Roads Authority. We are talking about Roads Authority, how KURA is enhancing safety on urban roads. We'll be back just a short while.
This is the
Okay,
Situation
so do you see like some of these areas that you're saying? And I completely understand. I mean, public transport, matatus stop and pick passengers everywhere. It's because of the demand that they're getting from the passengers. Shukisha hapa, stopping a matatu there. Is that user feedback? Maybe the users are telling you that where you designed and designated for us to stop, it doesn't work for us.
Not mainly so, because let me take you back, because I think everyone here in this room was around when we had KBS.
Yes.
And we all know how it used to work. We all remember that. And we used to have one single bus station we used to have designated picking points. Kencom, GPO, everybody knew. And for you to alight or board a bus, you had to go there. But once we publicized that. Hilton, exactly. They were very conspicuous, and those actually became landmarks in this city. But now, after the public transport system changed formation. It is now you have your own matatu, I have mine, he has kila mtu akona yake. And it is now a rush against time and to pick as many passengers as possible. That is where the storm started beating us. Otherwise, it's not a feedback, because if, for example, you stop here and then 20 meters later I find someone else and then another 20 meters, is that customer feedback that I should have bus bays on all those all those locations?
Well noted. Let's conclude the conversation. Well, so I want you to, because you said 70% or more of what we see on the roads is because of user behavior. Yes? Now, take a minute. Speak to the user. What do you want the user to do?
If I was to speak at the Kenyan user today, and I think that is actually the greatest part of this conversation, is that we should actually be responsible road users. And what I mean by being a responsible road user is actually to try and learn and observe as much as possible about how you take yourself, how you carry yourself across, along, or even on a vehicle on that particular road. You should remember that a road is a fluid situation, is a very dangerous point. Is also a road is actually an avenue of everything that we do in life. It is actually a road that we use to go to school, to go to hospital, to go to business, to go to work. And therefore, it is a facility that each and every one of us should actually be able to access equally, equitably, and safely. So as a road user, you should always maintain discipline. You should be visible if you're on a pedestrian. You should always wear something that is bright in color. At night, you should always, if possible, get something that is reflective. If not, only use a designated crossing point or where there is lighting. Don't cross a road where you cannot see or where the motorist cannot see you. As a motorist in the urban setup, you must actually obey the traffic rules. Know that it is gazetted. It is 50 kilometers per hour in any urban setup. If a policeman stops you or flags you down anywhere around the city and tells you you're moving beyond 50 kilometers per hour, he's actually supposed to charge you because it's actually within the law. And for those of us who are operating the public transport system, there is where we have the greatest level of confusion. We should actually adhere to the infrastructure we have. If it is bus-based, stick to the ones that are provided. And another thing is that the shoulders, most of the time we have matatus destroying our road furniture. They go off the road, they knock down bollards, they knock down signs, and these are actually things that inform the general public on how to use that particular road. So as a road safety officer, as a person in charge of road safety starts with you individually.
Usalama barabarani inaanza na mimi na wewe.